Weird Tales of Modernity, a book from 2019 by Ray Carney, and it is a look at Clark Ashton Smith, Robert E. Howard, and H.P. Lovecraft. Of course, it also has a much longer subtitle, The Ephemerality of the Ordinary and Stories of Robert E. Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, and H.P. Lovecraft. It is by Pulp scholar Jason Ray Carney, who I'm mostly familiar with through his work with the sword and sorcery genre. Now, this is pretty short, right? Not terribly long as far as scholarly work goes. There is, well, pretty much you're gonna get an introduction, and then just this idea of Pulp Aphraxis he's gonna introduce you to, and he's gonna talk about Weird Tales itself, the magazine. And then he goes into the authors. He got a couple chapters in Clark Ashton Smith, a couple in R.B. Howard, and a couple in H.P. Lovecraft. So there's a talk about, in the introduction, for disdain for modern art, a difference between art from entertainers and philosophers, and then he'll give an overview of the book. There's this general question of that we kind of look at when we read this as, is pulp trash, right? Is pulp fiction trash, or why ignore pulp fiction? If it's not trash, maybe there's just too much of it. It's literature for the masses, right? There's stuff like the approach he's going to take, whether it's literary over historiographical, and also whether or not these pulp authors should be recontextualized for a literary lens or into a literary lens. Whether it's deserved, or this idea that pulp is something that is you consume because you don't want to think, you want to escape, right? So it's entertainment or distraction, and also how this relates to, if you know the period, of course, at the time would be modernism, and how this is strictly speaking shadow modernism, again dealing with ephemerality and change, and it's interesting. Actually, at the beginning, we also get some opinions from these three authors, Robert E. Howard, H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, on the modernists as when they were, actually being written at the time, back in the interwar period. So, and they're pretty juicy. They are opinionated. We also just have the sections themselves. So I'm briefly just gonna mention all this stuff. I enjoyed each section pretty much as I enjoy the authors, really. So I love the Clark Ashton Smith section. I tend to love Clark Ashton Smith when I read him. I enjoyed the Robert E. Howard section. I tend to enjoy him not as much as Clark Ashton Smith. And I found the H.P. Lovecraft section okay, because I find H.P. Lovecraft as a writer to be okay and not that interesting, personally, for me. So that is also to say that my interest kind of rose and fell throughout the book, or in some sense, actually, because the order of the book, it kind of waned as the book went on. But that I don't feel like that's Carney's fault. It's just where my own interests lie, pretty much. So the book does have a very high level of literary language for its criticism. It's almost, if you compare it, since I study early medieval England, like kind of compared to the Latin hermeneutic style that was very popular in early medieval England, which is to say it's not super accessible. It's not super approachable for lay people, and there's lots of terms that if you're not familiar, I would say even not even like you took maybe a literary analysis class or whatever in as an undergrad, you're probably not even going to know a lot of the terms in here. Or even if you're just a straight up English major, I feel like you're not going to know a lot of the terms, depending on where you got your degree, what the program was like. So I think two that are important to know going in is ekphrasis, which is pretty much just a literary description of or commentary on a work of art, essentially. I think it tends to be for visual works of art, but it is actually just Greek for description. Fancy word, right? And then we also have reify, which I've experienced more in like philosophy texts, which is pretty much just to make something that is abstract more concrete. So overall, though, the book covers lots, right, with these three authors in relation to each other, and with the modernist literature of the time as well that they don't normally get lumped in with, again, because they're pulp. Um, and then also with some art and philosophy. It seems like it's meant to convert those that wouldn't consider the Weird Tale 3 as high art to, to make those people, or help those people take this art seriously. I do think, and not, again, it's not really written for a layperson, it feels like, or one that already enjoys them. But I think there's some enjoyment that could be getting out of it here, if that is you, anyways. It is enlightening, I feel like, on modernism as well, and some popular imaginative authors from that period, and worth reading also if you just have an interest in modernism. So I don't have much thoughts. I did enjoy it. Again, it's not super thick. And I don't remember it being insanely expensive as far as scholarly works go either. It's not as cheap as something like Uppsala Books, but not out of hand, right? I was looking at a dictionary, Old Saxon dictionary yesterday. It was $450, or even the ebook, which doesn't make any sense to me. So it's more affordable in that sense, and therefore more accessible, which I think is important. Actually, author doesn't have much to do with that normally, just the publisher, but still. Anyways, check it out if that is something you're interested in, and if you're not sure on maybe Carney's style, he does have some stuff you can read online that in shorter form that might give you a better idea. So anyways, William from Williams Lyceum. I'll catch you next time.